And bam! Wow. Okay. I'm Charles Morris. Welcome to Youth Central Sports. And I just heard from Vince Carter, Sr., and Vince is not feeling well tonight. So I'm flying solo, but sort of, kind of, but not really, you know. As a matter of fact, we're going to start including you from Facebook as well as Periscope and Twitter. So we want to have interaction now because we wanted to establish some things first. And so we will be actually showing stuff, taking your questions and comments from Facebook, Twitter, and well as text messages as well as emails. And even so, we probably will be able to take some phone calls that will allow, for an example, the phone calls would be a number that I would give you. And if you have a webcam, then you come on and we see you and we talk and then we answer your questions. Then the next person will come on if that's something that you desire to do. If in addition to maybe might not want to text, that you could be so into what's going on that you just have something to say about one of your favorite sports. Anyway, I'm Charles Morris. This is Youth Central Sports. We come your way every Wednesday at 11 p.m. Vince Carter is not feeling too well. He's under the weather, and he told me that he's in the bed right now. And so we've been doing this show for a while now. And Vince Carter is no longer here in Florida. A couple of years ago, he left. And I tease him about it. He left me here in Florida. He is now coaching up in Tennessee, high school basketball. And also he took on a second job earlier. What is this? Late last year, special need kids. And so that's a new world for him. And so he said that has truly been a blessing because now he sees things totally different, open up his mind on some things in life and a different perspective. Again, I'm Charles Morris. You're watching Youth Central Sports. And a couple of things for the show. Vince and I kind of go back and forth on some things. And so Youth Central Sports, the essence of it is to talk about how sports can be used in a positive way. The Olympic coach, Nassar, is a perfect example of how sports can be used in a negative way. And things can happen when you are put in the wrong environment with the wrong person or people. So sports can have a extreme positive effect, and it can have an extreme positive effect. I mean, a negative effect and positive effect. So that's what we try to talk about, and how sports can be used as a tool for mentoring, especially since we no longer have the village like we used to, and sports, which I still don't understand why they took away. So here in Florida. Not everywhere in every state, but here in Florida, they've taken away so much in middle school sports. Back when I was played, it was called junior high. So, and I know the role that it played and the difference that it made in so many lives of people that I know personally, and I know they can come on and tell you. As a matter of fact, my first father figure was my coach in junior high school, and the influence and the impact that he had on me, and I can't imagine what my life would be like if he was not there, along with the sports and all of that I remember in the experience and all the things that we went through, the time spent, the bonding, the memories, and all of that pertain to sports. So I just don't understand us sometimes, which is one of the reasons why I asked a question because we did a whole show last week and we were talking about Larry, the Olympic coach. And I'm the coach. I'm sorry. Not the coach. I said the coach. The physician. The physician. The trainer. I said coach. I meant the trainer. And it bothers me, and it's not a pass like the Sandusky from Penn State. No one ever talks about how mental deranged these people are. And every time we talk about them, as if they're normal people. And there's no normalcy about anything when you're a man and you're doing these things to little boys. There's nothing normal about some grown man doing what he's doing to 12 and 13-year-old little girls. And for some odd reason, we think because there's a status, he's educated, he makes money, he lives in a certain neighborhood, he drives a certain car. And for some odd reason, when we have money, that just put us in a category in which we look more crazier than the people that are crazy. Like, we'll vote for somebody who consistently all the time a mental breakdown in so many areas of their life, and we'll vote for them because they have money. And so I think it makes us more mental than the people who are mental. So what does that say about us? That's a different show. But I think there's something seriously wrong with us not addressing the true essence of what is really going on. Now, for those who know me and have watched me since 2013 on the Journey 2020, you would know that my co-host for a long period of time was Dr. Robertson, the clinical psychologist here in the Central Florida area, who stopped doing the show because he became extremely busy, moved into a new building. And so he's doing a lot of things, so he can't do the show anymore. But we still talk. I still do some work with him. As a matter of fact, he has an event coming up real soon, National Black AIDS Day. That's a big event that he does every year, along with the Recovery Walk and Run. But I told Vince that I was going to talk with Dr. Robertson about the topic. Now, we're going to we're going to talk about the Super Bowl coming up, because Vince and I kind of get into it a little bit about some things, because I asked James Harris, who I had on the show last February for Black History Month. And for those who really know football, know who James Harris is, the first black starting quarterback in the NFL. And I asked him some questions about what he thinks is going to take place on Sunday. So we're going to hear from him. Unfortunately, we couldn't get his pad going, so I just had to tape his voice. But that's okay. We still heard it. We're still going to hear what he had to say about the game coming up on Sunday between the Philadelphia Eagles and the New England Patriots. I went to school in Boston, so I know how those New England fans are, especially for the Bruins and the Red Sox. And the Patriots, oh yeah. Man, they love their Bruins, they love their Celtics, they love their Patriots, man. For real. Anyway, I asked Dr. Robinson about what I was talking about earlier, and how we look at someone like the trainer and the gentleman that was arrested at Penn State, Sandusky, I think that's his name. And to this day, I still ask, like, what is wrong with us? And so here is what Dr. Robinson had to say. Charles Morse here on Youth Central Sports. And as Vince and I had been talking, and he even asked about Dr. Robinson for those who watch. Oh, I'm sorry. Let let me go back. It's the Journey 2020. You well know
I'm
who
sorry.
Dr. Robinson is. And from time to time, when we're talking, I always say, man, even when Pastor Jenkins is on the Journey 2020, it'd be like, that's a great question for Dr. Robinson. Well, guess what? As Vince and I was talking last week about what has been going on at Michigan State, also with the Olympics and so on and so forth, I always ask the question, why do we act like this is normal behavior? We, as we talked about what Vince does as far as working with the organization that he did here in Orlando before he left to go to Tennessee. And so he works a lot with drug addiction, alcoholism, and those type of things. So the behavior and that he talks about the dysfunction on a level that a lot of us never sees. So I asked the question, when people are in the news like this, we never address that it is dysfunctional. People are got mental problems. And one of the things that Vince always says and that we talk about is that this country does not do a good job in handling mental health. You know, that's why when you go into the prison system, the jail system, a lot of people are arrested with that really just need help. So as I talk about this with Vince, I asked the question, like, we sit up there, I'm trying to think of his name. Well, let me bring in Dr. Robinson. Dr. Robinson, how you
Uh-oh.
doing? How you doing? Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Good morning. Good
It's
morning,
been so
Charles.
long since I sat across from you and talked with you here on the show with the Journey 2020, but now I have you on Youth Central Sports. How you been? Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you and blessings. It feels like old home day in just being able to be here for this telecast. So thank you, Charles, for inviting me.
Well, what I didn't do was that I didn't give you the proper introduction. Once you tell us who you are, and so when the people, when you talk, they'll know that I just didn't go pull Dr. Robinson off the corner to say, what's up?
But actually, Charles, just saying what's up is more than a good welcome. But I'm Dr. John Robertson, and I'm a doctor of psychology. I practice as a private practitioner here in Orlando, and I just happen to be a graduate of Michigan State, and that may
Wow.
have been as much of a influence in Charles inviting me to speak as anything else.
You know what? I
Go
forgot
ahead.
about that. I don't know how because of the video and the thing a couple of years ago. But you're right. You
Uh,
graduated from Michigan State. Wow.
yeah,
And
yeah,
I had
yeah.
forgot about that.
That's it. Well, that's one of the things that with the news coming out that I might want to forget. But again, be that as it may, thanks for inviting me.
But now that you say that, but how do you look at that as far as you being a graduate of Michigan State? I mean, how do you view that personally, though?
Well, it's a real disappointment, but it also reminded me and of the kind of uh, impact that sports had at Michigan State and many schools that are Division I schools, and that is often sports is used as a device to raise money, to raise the reputation of the school, and to basically be a commodity that's used by colleges in order to expand their influence. So, in many ways, it's not a surprise that things would go in the direction that they did. I remember, even back in my days there, that sports was looked at as a close competitor to the academic pursuits and the academic investments that the school made. So when we think in terms of sports, and as you said, mental health, often sports it drives the school. And as we saw in the instance of Penn State, um, the emphasis on school, money, and national reputation often has overridden the the integrity and the academic purposes of a school. And I would say that uh, part of the problem, and we see this not only in gymnastics, but we see this primarily in football and in basketball,
Hmm.
how the pursuit of gold money for the school and the pursuit, of glory for the school overrides the rational decisions that administrators, coaches, and at times I even say parents of athletes make in terms of that goal of getting that number one team or that number one prospect into that school.
Okay, I'm going to
So,
come back to that in a minute because that's another discussion that I wanted to talk
mm,
about. Actually, probably on the Journey 2020, because
mhm.
we had talked about. I'm just going to say this for a minute, then we can move on. How our president became
Okay.
president, and I wanted to
Mm,
talk. I wanted to talk about. I'm just going to stay on this for a second. I just want to throw it out there. What is the
mm,
message in our country now that for someone of that stature, like Trump, who had many accusers, who also was on the tape and talking about grabbing and doing all of this and da 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 da, what does it say in the message that it sends, especially with the mentality that we have in this country as men and our attitude towards women? But what does it say when the women vote for someone who we see as obviously who has this mentality and how he looks down upon women? The What's the real message that you're sending to men, that it looks like, what, is as long as I have a status, long as I have enough money, then there's
yeah.
things that I can do to violate you, but it's okay because of my status. Now that's a
Hmm.
little something that's a little different that we
Right.
talked about, because the true message that you're sending, because I don't think that they really understand the message that they're sending to men as a whole in our outlook, because there's a little resentment when it comes to a man and a woman, because I could be hardworking, I could be a good father, I can be all these things that I have shaped up to be a good man because I'm a good provider, but because I don't carry this status that you think that is needed. Because I give you a perfect example, was there's a basketball player who made the All-Star team this year, who
Hmm.
earlier was trying to talk to an artist, a singing artist. This artist
Hmm.
said to him, "Come back to me and talk to me when you're an all-star." Now, to me, I
Mm.
would run as far away from her as I can, but because of her status, who she is, they're interviewing him in the news like that's a normal good thing. Now that he's an all-star, now are you going to go ask her out? To me, that's crazy, but
Yeah.
that's again, that's crazy. But my
Right.
question, okay, now I'm going to get off of that, Dr. Robertson.
Okay, go
My question to you is, why do we act in this country, or what is going on? What is going on that someone
ahead.
like Sandusky and the gentleman
Right.
from Michigan State, the
Yeah.
doctor,
Larry Nassar. Right.
when those things happen, in the news, it's never addressed if there's a
Mm,
mental problem, mainly because they carry a status, a doctor. They have very good income. They live in nice neighborhoods. They drive nice cars. They have a good college
hmm.
education, a degree, a this, a that, their status. But there's obviously something wrong mentally, but it's never addressed that way. Can you kind of touch on that for a minute? And that's why I wanted you to come on Youth Central Sports.
Okay, good. I'm glad you touched on that. Um, as a society, we tend to be, if you want to call it, in many ways, hypocritical, so that we don't take a look at often individuals who have money and power, and so that it is easy to dismiss this case with the doctor at Michigan State or I think it's Sandusky at Penn State as somehow people that are either evildoers, and they are, but the deeper issue is that these individuals have been allowed to, in many ways, thrive in their pathology because we've refused to look at um, abnormal behavior often in its early stages. We like to say, oh, well, he's just a little difficult, or Dr. So and so, he just has his own way, and we often let, tend to not want to recognize mental health issues that manifest themselves as behavioral issues early on, especially when the individual has money and power. Now, if a Larry Nassar was just Joe Blow, we would probably have been reading about him 20 years ago in the Orlando Sentinel here in Orlando, or in whatever newspaper, as having tried to approach young girls, etc. But with two things: the denial that often exists with individuals around that person, and then the institutional denial, where institutions in which that individual works or thrives also then refuses to look at the abnormal behavior. That individual then feels, well, if no one is saying anything, if no one is doing anything, then in their pathological thinking, they said, well, hey, no one has said anything. So in that individual's mind, it's okay to continue doing that. And I would say one of the things that we can do, either as individuals, friends, colleagues, associates, etc., is when we see abnormal behavior, instead of just talking, let's say perhaps behind the individual's back, etc., be able to point out those behaviors that they are not normal, that there's something wrong there, and if we have any kind of inkling, be able to put that out. Now, I know some people will say, well, we don't want to cause problems for that individual. But again, think of if someone had way back 20 or some odd years ago had said something about Larry Nassar to the coaches, to someone else, reported it, etc. Just think of how many lives might have been um, undamaged based on that. But
Wow.
instead, both the individuals and the institution remained silent. And as we know that at times the if you want to call it the sin of omission, not saying anything, can be as devastating as if you want to call it as a sin of commission, of actually doing the act.
It's a in our society that you touched on. For an example, Baylor football coach was let go because there were so many situations with the football players there. But when they
Mm,
were talking about getting rid of him, and it's the normal reaction a lot of times because he was winning. So they were trying
mm-hmm,
to find a way to save his job because he was
mm-hmm.
winning. And as you know, when you're winning, that brings in money. And that's which what you
Yes.
touched on. And it's just I think Vince had talked about this and the integrity and what we have become when it
Mm,
comes to just right and wrong, but somehow or another, the money supersedes any and everything throughout all of our
yes.
relations, through all the things that has transpired over a period of time.
Mm-hmm,
An example, when you have over 150, and there's probably some, when I'm talking about Larry Nancer, uh, probably
mm,
some that didn't come and testify, some that we probably would never
yeah,
know about. But
exactly.
it seems to be a problem in our society, not necessarily the problem of the school, but it's the problem of the of our society and what we have become overall.
Yeah. Yeah. And Charles, if I can touch on this a bit, um, it is a monster of a problem because just as we're talking about our American society, we at times think that we are immune from compromising our so-called American values. And often in the past had looked at countries like an East Germany or a Russia and basically looked down our noses at them for the drugging and the using of their athletes um, in the Olympics way back, as far as we know, um, to the 1970s and maybe even before. And so when those things happened, we said, oh, look at those communist countries, um, what they had to do in order to win medals. By the way, um, those are a part of a power game on an international level. Um, again, I don't want to get too deep on this,
Mhm.
but if you even go further back to the 1939 Olympics with Jesse Owens in Germany, one of the things that was critical to that regime was the aspect of winning, because winning for them meant power, pride, and recognition. And so I would say to you that we have become increasingly infected by some of the same principles that for us, and coming back to mental health, um, that for the sake of winning, we have increasingly compromised our mental health, and I would say to you, our moral health, based on the concept of increasing power and position and pride.
Well, again, I wanted to invite you to come on. I'm taking up your Saturday morning, but again,
Oh,
there's
it's a
so many.
pleasure.
No, there's so many topics and subjects that we cover, and like I said, there's times when, like, man, Dr. Robinson, man, we that's a good question for Dr. Um, well, I mean, because it's just, I don't know, it's you you have to stay strong on your faith now, in the
Yeah,
society
yeah,
that that we live in,
yeah,
just trying to find some answers to some of the simplest questions of what have we become, because money just seems to drive everything. If you ever want to find out
yeah.
the answer, just follow the money. They're saying, just follow the money,
Exactly.
just follow the money, and then you will
Hmm.
know. Just follow the money, and
Exactly.
when you apparently, from Michigan State, the president has stepped down, the athletic director is stepping down. They're
Right.
trying to get they're now going after the football coach, Tom Azuzu,
Hmm.
well, the basketball coach. So
Right.
it's going to be interesting for the next few weeks or months to see exactly what happens. I think the Olympic gymnastic, I think that whole panel board is now stepping down because there's so
Yes,
much of a cover up
exactly.
that has taken on for so long. Because again, it's about the money. It's about the money. It's about
Yes,
the money.
yes.
And from what I understand, there were 6 allegations that came up with Michigan State, with Nansar, and no one did anything. So
Mm, yeah,
uh, over a period of time, and when you hear all these
exactly.
girls and their stories, again, you you just wonder, what does it take, especially when I say especially, it
Mm.
doesn't matter really what age, but when you're talking about 13, 12, 13, 14-year-old girls, it's like, how do you not hear what is being said? You know, I don't know.
It again talks to our values, what we truly places values, and it gets into the issue of uh, we may be talking the talk in one instance, but as a nation and as a community, and I want to take it down to family. Are we walking the walk? And and by that, um, uh, one of the things in working with individuals who have suffered trauma, um, or who have had something as a disaster happen to them, one of the most useful things that they can do is to talk about it. So I want to, Charles, say that you're raising the topic, and having you and Vince talk about it, and then reaching out to me again. Not that it needed to be individually me, but not letting this topic go under the rug, being able to put it into the light. And as someone way back said, one of the best disinfectants for germs is sunlight. So as we put things into the light, it allows us to begin to really think about them, and then hopefully begin to do something about it.
Okay, this is a question that I wanted to ask, and if you can answer in about 3 minutes, only because I don't want
Go
to take
for it.
up any more of your time. No, 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 because
Not a
I've
problem.
I don't, if you can answer, and I don't know if you can, but
Okay.
Vince and I were talking about that whole experience, that whole just going through that, and your training, and then I mean, I'm leaving a lot out, but even from the parent standpoint of, this is a meal ticket. This is a dedication of this training and hours and hard work. and then all of a
Mhm.
sudden you run into this guy. And so
Mhm.
from a mental standpoint, that you're doing this on the highest level, this is it. This is the Olympic. You're going for the goal. And then going through this, dealing with him, but also being able to focus to the point that you medaled. And now you have a gold medal. But on that journey through your training and dedication, you're dealing with this, how you, as an athlete, person being able to block this out and still focus and concentrate to get to that level to obtain that gold medal, but also for each individual, which I know is different. Every time you look at that gold medal, and I'm just asking from this standpoint,
Mhm.
for some, will they associate that with what went on with him, or some are just able to block it out totally because that medal is yours forever. And so when you think
Mhm.
of it from the standpoint of I have this gold medal, but look at what I had to go through to get there. So am I asking
Mhm.
something that makes sense?
Mhm. Yeah, Charles, it makes a lot of sense, and you really touch on the kind of damage that occurs because of someone like a Larry Nassar, or quite frankly, it could be anyone that has taken advantage of these young girls. And by the way, in gymnastics or in other sports, and we saw with the gentleman at Penn State, and I'm hoping I'm pronouncing his name correctly, Sandusky, I think,
Yes.
um, that it could be boys, but those kind of experiences leave indelible scars. And you're right that there may be some, um, and a smaller percentage that not, that are able to, despite those experiences, go on. But for the majority of individuals, the majority of young girls and young boys, those experiences leave scars that, despite the medals, despite the achievement, despite the accolades, often lie and fester as wounds to the psyche. So that, as you saw in the testimony of those young women in court when they were testifying against Larry Nassar, that the emotions that were brought up were emotions that were the result of the kind of scars that they still bear. And so it is not just the emotion of the moment that was being elicited, but often the memories of what happened to them as young girls, the kind of, at times, shame, confusion. And again, think of it. They've had to think of what happened to them as somehow um, normal, or in many instances, and I see this in my clinical practice, that youngsters like that often see themselves as at fault, as that somehow to blame for what has happened to them. Because, and again, think about it. If something happened to you out of the ordinary, and you may have even told someone of what happened to you, and nothing results of it, then of course you're going to begin thinking, well, oh, maybe I'm overemphasizing what happened to me. Maybe what happened to me isn't all that, you know, different, all that special. And so um, maybe that's all I'm worth.
And,
Maybe that's all I'm valued as.
right. And
So the medals yes, they will be high points of that individual's life, but often there is a wound that may interfere with that individual's self-esteem, may interfere with relationships,
Right.
may interfere with how they move on or have difficulty moving on in life.
Well,
So,
it's funny that you would say
go
that
ahead.
because there was a girl on there that did testify that she's having problems trusting. She has a problem with trying to have a relationship, and what else was kind of difficult for them because in being 13 years old and this is going on, and a couple of the girls had testified that their father was right there in the room. So if the father is right there in the
Mm,
room, you 13 years old, and this is going on, they're totally confused, and
mm-hmm.
it's like wow, wow. So, and then and again, I want to go ahead and wrap this up, but he even said, I think last week, that he still believed part of what he was doing was justified because he thought that this worked and it was psychologically, mentally a good thing for these young girls, as well. So
Hmm.
again, back to the mental problems,
Mm-hmm.
issues that I'm saying that we want to just put. I mean, the way we handle this. Well, him or someone like him, as if though he's normal, and that just blows my mind because when I think of Sandusky
Yeah.
and like that, I've been a male all my life, and just knowing the males that I've been around, that I know personally and myself, I don't share that world. I can't relate to that in any way, form, or fashion, but we act like it's
Yeah.
normal. you
Yeah.
know?
Exactly. Exactly.
Right.
And that allows um, individuals, sick individuals like a Larry Nassar, to operate with, excuse me, with impunity, without having the consequences that are there. Um, and when you said that he thought that it was okay to do what he did, that often is the rationale of individuals who are seriously mentally ill, who think that their behavior is normal. And and you see again, when they're in an environment where individuals around them then say, well, either don't say anything to a Larry Nasser, or when something is said, um, then slough it off that, oh, that's nothing. It again gives sick individuals the rationale that they can continue doing what they're doing and that it's okay.
Okay. Well, I've taken up a lot of your Saturday. I want to appreciate you getting up early on this Saturday morning. I will let Vince know. But one last thing, and that is
Yes,
I'm
sir.
hoping that I can do something with you to talk about being a narcissist, that whole thing with our president,
Oh, yeah. Uh huh.
what that's
Right.
about.
Oh, how can we
Huh?
leave him out of the conversation? But anyhow, I
No,
understand.
no, 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 no. But I mean, because somebody like Larry Nassar, that's part of narcissism as well. I mean, he got to be a
Yeah. Yeah.
narcissist, you know.
Oh,
But
yeah.
right, but just to talk about that, what that means, because a lot of people don't understand what that is when life is about you, everything's about you, and what that is and what comes to the table with that. So I definitely would like to have that show because I think we talked
Oh,
about it
yeah.
briefly on the Journey 2020,
We
but
did.
now that
Yeah.
I, we're able to talk about it with somebody that we know, that we see every day,
Right.
that affects us every day.
Yeah.
So I just want to
I hear
thank you.
you.
So you're gonna have to let me know when we can do that to even talk about it even more because we did talk about it on the Journey 2020. And thank you
Right.
for your continuous work that you're doing. Because I know you got National Black AIDS Day, and you do the run walk every year for
Right.
recovery. I did talk with a couple of people, and they even said how great the event is every year. So thank you so very much for your passion and for your hard, diligent work that you do all the time.
Thank you, Charles. By the way, tell Vince that I appreciate his work that he's doing, that he continues to do, and that he's talking about me even behind my back. I
Well,
tell
yeah,
him I appreciate that.
and what you don't know is he's taken on a second job when he moved up to Tennessee. His second
Ah,
job is that he's working with special needs students, which he says open up a whole nother world for him to see things in a total different way, which he says has required for him to find patience and understanding that he never knew that he had.
oh, I love it. Okay, do send him my best wishes.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Robinson. Um, Thank you for your time and thank you for coming on Youth Central Sports. We really appreciate the insight and for you to kind of give us an idea of some of this stuff that we're dealing with and understanding that in here in America, we really don't handle mental health too well at all. We have a long ways to go.
Thank you, and thanks for having me.
All right, cool. All right, that was Dr. John Robinson here in the Orlando area here in Central Florida. Um, uh, he used to, and we started the Journey 2020 back in 2013. He was my co-host, and actually that show was really his idea. We had done many things over the years with radio and with my talk show and some other things with my TV show that I had a while back, and I used to also do a radio show that I would ask him to come on and give his professional opinion on some things based on the topic. As you know, the Super Bowl is coming up, and would like to know who you think. Well, actually, would like to hear from you after the game. Give us your analogy and your thoughts and everything. Pretty soon, we will be giving out more of the phone number and like for an example, you can, text us and send us your comments and so on and so forth. You can email us always, but we're going to be a little bit more interactive. Excuse me. Coming up because we want to get you more involved in our conversations and thoughts and ideas. So the Super Bowl is coming up this coming Sunday. It's the New England Patriots against the Philadelphia Eagles. And I need to drink some water, which is good because I called up James Jack Harris, former NFL quarterback. That was the first black starting quarterback in the NFL. And I call him Shaq. He's a very nice gentleman, uh, very knowledgeable, great story. And if you want to really hear his story, look up the Journey 2020 and go back to February of last year. Just go on the journey2020.com and go through the shows, go back to February of last year, and you'll hear his story. A very, very fascinating story. But I wanted to hear and get some feedback from him on what he think of what's going to take place on Sunday, who he thinks is going to win, and we will talk to him next week for him to break down the game itself. And so here is my conversation with James Shaq Harris. He was not able to get his pad working, so we were able to record his audio. So I asked him a few questions, and here's James Shaq Harris. All right, I have with me right now is I call him a legend, and we all know that he is a legend, and that is James Shaq Harris. Shaq, how you doing? And Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you, Charles. Thanks for having me on your show.
Well, thank you for taking the time. It's funny because in the last week or so, and I didn't share this with you, but I had gotten a couple of responses on YouTube where you and Ray had came on the show, and there was a couple of people that actually had questions. But I'm going to try to bring you guys back. You know, last year I had you on the show for Black History Month, so I'm going to try to do the same thing and try to see if we can pick a time where we can have you guys on the show for Black History Month. And for those that don't know, I'm talking to James Harris, the legendary James Harris, who played in the NFL, the first black starting quarterback here in the NFL, and that's a whole nother story in itself. But the reason why I asked you to come on the show, because here on Youth Central Sports every Wednesday at 11 p.m., I'm with Vince Carter Sr. And one of the main reasons that I wanted you to come back on the show, because Vince and I are kind of going back and forth, and I'm not going to ask you about this right now, but we're kind of going back and forth on how he sees Tom Brady and how I see Tom Brady. I see him a little bit differently than Vince does, but I want to bring you into that debate as well. As great as he is, and the numbers that he has put up and where he's going to be in history, that is not really a debate in what we're talking about. But how I see him versus the way Vince sees him is a little different. But the reason why I asked you to come on the show is because we got the Super Bowl coming up this weekend, New England Patriots against the Philadelphia Eagles, and I'm just asking you for a quick James Shaq Harris prediction for the Super Bowl.
Well, I don't have a prediction, but I would favor the New England Patriots with an outstanding quarterback like Brady, who has the relentless ability when the game's on the line to make plays. Outstanding coach in Coach Belichick, who does a great job with tendencies. But I do feel that the Eagles can present a challenge based on the way the Jaguars played them last week, who went early in the game, looked like they were the best team. The Eagles have an outstanding defense. I think they have enough offensive weapons to possess the ball and keep Tom Brady off the field. Mm-hmm. You got to limit New England's opportunity to score.
Okay. One of the debates, and I don't necessarily call it a debate, but I think what I see a lot when, example, Jacksonville and other teams, that when they get in the playoffs, it appears they get to the point where they play not to lose versus playing to win. And it to me personally, that's what it appears to be. That's what it looks like to me. Jacksonville was trying to play not to lose the game versus playing to win. Do you see that? And I mean, for a lot of teams that when they do make it to the playoffs, and how they change what they've been doing the entire season.
I don't know if I would declare it playing not to lose. I would just say that I think once the momentum changes and the team that has the momentum early, late in the game, somehow or another New England has been there. They've been there a lot of times. They have a quarterback and coach who've been in these situations playing against some teams who doesn't have this type of experience. And late in the game, I don't know if they can turn it up a notch. This New England team has done that before and shown that they're very capable. They're at their best when the game's on the line.
No. All right. Well, so you're predicting, you're looking for New England to win. You're looking for Philly to give them a good game. But, well, I got a Philadelphia fan here with me, so she's hoping that the Philadelphia Eagles will win this game.
Well, I think they play sound defense, and New England has been a team the last 3 Super Bowls have had they've had their problems with Seattle, with Atlanta. They've been in tight games. Philadelphia just has to be prepared to make plays in the second quarter. And I think they need to score at least 24 points.
More importantly, I just hope that it's a really good game more than anything. I mean, you definitely have to give New England their props. How did you feel the chances would be more so for Philly if their quarterback hadn't gone down?
I think Philly early in the year with the quarterback Wentz was maturing and improving. I think they would have been a great formidable forward now with the quarterback in Wentz. But I think now he's not here. You have to look at the quarterback you have, and you're fortunate to have a quarterback that started in the league, had some success this year. He just has to play to a level where he does not lose the game, but cannot be tentative.
Mm-hmm.
He has to be aggressive and look to make plays.
Okay. Well, let me ask you this right here. What does James Shaq Harris do during the Super Bowl? Where do you go? There a special place you watch it? Is it a traditional thing for you? What is going on when the Super Bowl is going on?
I don't have no special plans. Sometimes I watch it at home. Sometimes I watch it with friends. Most of the time when I do go to the Super Bowl, I usually come back home and watch by the time the game starts.
Okay. All right. Well, what I would like to ask you to do, come back next week and you give us, what you saw, and you kind of break it down for us, and would love to hear that from you as well.
Well, thank you very much for the invite.
No, thank you for your time. But and would like to get you and Ray on again next month. For Black History Month, and go over some of those questions that people email me, just to let you know that they really wanted to ask you and Ray how the game has evolved over the years, and what does that mean. So we will save that for next month for Black History Month, but hopefully we can catch up with you next week so you can kind of break down the Super Bowl, and you can kind of help us understand some of the ins and outs and what was going on and what you saw.
Well, thank you very much.
All right, that's James Shaq Harris, one-time Ram, one-time Buffalo Bill, and who else did you play for, Shaq?
San Diego.
San Diego. All right. Legendary James Harris. Want to thank him. James Shaq Harris. Want to thank him for taking the time out to coming on Youth Central Sports. True that. James Shaq Harris, legendary James Shaq Harris, who I can remember watching him when I was a kid, in awe of this brother being a starting quarterback in the NFL, which is so common now. The people don't think about it twice, but back then there was no black starting quarterbacks anywhere, not even in high school. In order for you to be a starting quarterback, you had to be at a black school. Period. So anyway, that's another topic for another day. Again, we are asking you that we're gonna be asking you to hit us up on Twitter. Also, send your questions and your comments. You can text us. You can hit us up on Facebook. You can hit us up on Twitter. All of that, coming up. And definitely we want to hear what you think, what you thought of the Super Bowl. And I got a serious Philadelphia fan, so be interesting to see. So, Philly definitely got a shot. So if that defense step up, then that's going to always be the key, is to put the pressure on Brady. If you put pressure on Brady, then a whole lot of things change. And well, that's in any game when you can put pressure on the quarterback. It makes all the difference in the world. You can't let them sit back there and throw. But anyway, as I would say, be safe, be sound throughout the Super Bowl parties. Make sure that you don't drink too much, don't drink and drive. And I always say that please take the time to make a phone call to someone that you haven't talked to in a while, whether it's a family or a friend. And if there need to be some kind words of forgiveness, please do that as well. Vince Carter is not feeling well tonight, so we're hoping that he is feeling better and that he will be with us next week. And blessings to you and everyone. And you make sure that you enjoy yourself and don't have too much fun, which means that don't take it to the streets and don't overdrink. Like I said, don't drink and drive. Blessings to you, and thank you for joining us here at youthcentralsports.com. Blessings to you.